Our government is a reflection of its people. We are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We were not designed to be a government of politicians for our state capitals, or by our state capitals for Washington, D.C. As a government of the people, as a constitutional republic, that means our government is a reflection of us. And if we are tired of the immorality in government, then maybe we should change some things about us. Because this is what has happened to who we are. The more immoral, the more lawless we become, the more laws we demand from government. The more laws government gets, the more power it has, and the more power it wants. The more power government has, the less liberty the people hold. This has been the constant struggle of governments throughout the centuries. You know, there's a common misconception that the principles that are embodied in our founding documents were somehow written or developed or thought up around 1776. Some people even say that modern America is so different than it was back when we founded the nation that our framers couldn't have possibly known what we would see today. So we have to reinterpret the Constitution to meet our modern society. The problem is what I just described to you, this struggle in government, the people wanting liberty, the government wanting power, and that constant struggle throughout the centuries has been just that, throughout the centuries. Our framers did know what to expect because they knew their history. Patrick Henry said, "I have but one lamp by which my feet are guided, and that is the lamp of experience. I know no way to judge the future but by the past." Alexander Hamilton, when describing the Constitution, he argued we did not need a Bill of Rights. Why would he say such a thing? Because he knew that there were 5 fundamental documents that had been written over 800 years that built the knowledge and understanding of liberty, that created the understanding of the principles needed for liberty in government. He knew that those documents already existed. He said, we don't need a Bill of Rights. Those 5 documents that have been written over those 800 years, he said, those are our Bills of Rights. Our framers did know what we were going to see because they knew their history. You see, it's these 5 fundamental documents that were written over 800 years that actually prove that what our framers experienced and put into our Constitution is completely relevant and vital to our understanding and limitation of government today. It's this history that is essential to the proper understanding and application of our Constitution that we have set aside for generations. I teach people all over the country. I have taught people with Supreme Court justices in Texas. I have taught people with PhDs and master's degrees in American history that have never heard this history. You have to ask why, right? Why would we hide such a thing? Well, you're going to find out tonight. Because I'm going to show you the history that proves, number one, that our Constitution is not a living document. That it is a foundational document, essential to the preservation of liberty. I'm going to show you that the history that created our Constitution is relevant today and prove to you that our framers did know what we were going to see. Our history begins with this understanding of liberty. You see, liberty is the inherent possession of men. It's not a gift of government. But people didn't always understand that. Our immediate history as far as the foundation of this nation. I'm not going to go all the way back to Rome, but our immediate history, as Thomas Paine recognizes, begins about 1041. Now, Great Britain in 1041 was like every other kingdom in Europe, a kingdom. And when you live in a kingdom and you're subject to a king, that means every day you wake up wondering what the king's going to do. Because in a kingdom, you have no rights and privileges unless the king decrees them, declares them, they belong to you. That's the difference between a republic and a kingdom, by the way. In a kingdom, the government holds all the power and determines the rights of the people. In a republic, the people hold all the power, all the rights, and determine which powers go to government. Great Britain was a kingdom. Its subjects always left to the whim of the sovereign. But they were unique, different from every other kingdom in Europe because of one thing. They had common law. You see, it was this common law that made them different from every other kingdom in Europe, because every other kingdom, you woke up every single day wondering what the king was going to do to you today. But in Great Britain, because of common law, you woke up and you knew that some things were always true. Some things were always right. Some things were always wrong. It was this common law that made Great Britain unique. Common set of rules based on common social standards, commonly known by all, commonly enforced on all classes, theoretically anyway. You know, it didn't quite work out that way. But nonetheless, they knew when they woke up that some things kings could not do, some things people could not do. They also had a king named Edward the Confessor. Edward had declared a right of the people to meet with their barons and lords twice a year. Now, the barons and lords would be the equivalents of our representatives today. For all intents and purposes, the landowners. They had direct contact with the king, the kings being the lawmakers. The barons and lords could also be considered lawmakers within their shires, within their land. And the king had said you can meet with your barons and lords twice a year, discuss with them the things that you like about government and the things that you don't like about government. Now, the idea then is that the barons and lords will take this information to the king. What do you suppose the king would do with the inputs of the people? Whatever he wants, right? Are kings elected? Are kings appointed? Do the people have any determination on their reign short of chopping off their heads? No. So the king doesn't care what the people want. But you see, this is the beginning of an awakening of the people of this sense of responsibility in their communities, which is going to awaken within them an understanding of liberty. See, this historical journey is going to be about the awakening of the people, because government never gets liberty. Even when you have liberty-minded people, something happens when they get into government. I don't know, it's this big vacuum come and suck that part of their brain out of their head. I don't know what it is. But the bottom line is this. It's got to be a liberty resting in the people controlling the government to maintain that liberty. Now, Edward is on his deathbed. He's had no son, which means he has no direct heir to the throne. And they've got a problem because Great Britain wants to keep an Englishman on the throne so they can keep this common law system the way it's been going. If you get a foreign king, you never know what you're going to get. So they make up this, they devise this idea of appointing a man named Harold to be King of England. He's actually Edward's second in command. But it's 1066. You're still not electing kings, and you're still not appointing kings. Just because Edward doesn't have a son doesn't mean there isn't a cousin somewhere who's going to claim a blood right to the throne, right? And there is. His name is William I. William I is in Normandy. Now, I've picked up Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and I'm reading it again. I quite often pick them up and read them over and over again because as our history develops, we mirror so much of what they're doing. I see new parallels every day. And it's funny because Thomas Paine has nothing nice to say about William I. He calls him a fatherless Frenchman, but he doesn't use that term fatherless, you know. And even refers to him as an idiot, I think, in one point. But listen, William I has a nickname other than what Thomas Paine is calling him. He is called William the Conqueror. Now, William gets wind that he's not going to get to be king, that they're going to appoint somebody outside the bloodline. That makes him very angry. Can you imagine what happens when you make a guy angry whose nickname is the Conqueror? He conquers. He raises his Norman army. He goes over and conquers Harold and the English people, setting himself up on the throne. Now, this probably would not be a big deal because this is medieval times, right? You've seen the movies. Kingdoms come, kingdoms go, kings come, kings go. But the bottom line is this. Great Britain is unique, and William hates Great Britain. Now, we don't have to hear William say that, right? Because we know a better judge of a man than his words are his actions. Don't you wish we voted like that? Yeah? How many of you can think of politicians who have told you one thing and done another? Now, I had a conversation with a lady in Florida. I am from Florida. And I had a conversation with a lady in Florida. She was, you know, like-minded, conservative group. But she had a terrible affliction. It's called cult of personality worship. And she was in love with this particular politician. And I was trying to be diplomatic. Now, my husband jokes, says I don't have a diplomatic bone in my body, but I can be that way. And I said to her, well, you know, have you checked out his voting record? She said, yeah, but he's a really nice guy. I said, well, you know, I've met him. I know he's a nice guy. But really, have you studied his voting record? Because I need you to know. You say you're a conservative and you love the Constitution. Every time he votes against the Constitution. She says, yeah, but his votes don't really reflect the kind of guy that he is. That's when you go like that, right? Because there are no words to describe that. I said, then what does? I can guarantee you one of two things about any politician's votes. One of two things. If they stand in front of you, give you a rip-roaring patriotic speech that, you know, liberty, country, founding, God bless America, maybe even brings a tear to your eye. And then when it comes time to vote in defense of the Constitution, they vote against the Constitution. One of two things is going on. Number one, they're lying to you. They're simply telling you what they think you want to hear because they're looking to get political gain, power, influence, whatever it is they think you're going to give to them. Or, number two, they actually believe what they're telling you. But when it comes time to vote their conscience, something happens. They're so weak in character. They're so uneducated in the truth that they can't stand for what is right, that they allow someone else to talk them out of voting their conscience for one reason or the other. Can you think of somebody like that? Any idea who we were talking about in Florida? Marco Rubio. We have another one now, too. You probably don't know. I get sort of boos and hisses when I bring up this, but it's the honest to goodness truth. Alan West. Alan West voted against the Constitution every single time, save one. He has nearly an identical voting record with Marco Rubio. Are you guys familiar with the indefinite detention provisions